So what are next steps? We're almost halfway through 2025 now. Where's this all going?
Absolutely. So first of all, there are two directions that the field is going in right now. One of them, which I think is a broader trend in psychiatry in general, is the field of personalized medicine. So let's look at your symptoms and let's see if we can achieve a higher chance of success by looking at your specific symptoms and personalizing maybe the frequency of treatment or the type of medication we use or the location of the coil based on your specific parameters, which is great if it works. But the downside, of course, is it also adds a lot more complexity. So, psychiatric treatments are already costly and hard to get. And so this makes them more costly and more hard to get. The other potential approach that we could try, not to say that then there's certainly going to be a role for that. Personalized medicine is certainly looking very exciting, but there are some things, there's a different approach where we try not to personalize and when we simply try to come up with a sort of greatest good for the greatest number approach. And so I want to unpack that a little bit to point at the idea that there might be some brain circuits. I mentioned earlier there are some brain circuits that are universally involved across a variety of different disorders. And so one of the questions I asked one of my colleagues at Harvard who had been doing one of these brain mapping type studies and saying, instead of mapping the circuits that are associated with depression or PTSD or addictions or whatever, we noticed that some people just have resilience. So they actually function much better than expected. Like for those of us who work in clinics and see thousands of patients, you'll see these people who have like terrible depression and yet somehow like they're still functioning really well. Or people who have terrible Parkinson's and can barely move and somehow they're still kind of functioning. Or have had a stroke that's crippling to them and as we mentioned earlier, are somehow still functioning. And then
functioning mentally.
And in the activities of daily life. Like, yes, they're super, but they're somehow still, I actually saw a gentleman, what was it? I don't know his name. We were having brunch in Palo Alto, just up the road. And there was a little man, he looked in his 90s in a wheelchair by himself. And he was out for a walk. He was using one leg and his heel to drag his wheelchair along 1 foot at a time. And he smiled and waved to us and he kind of crept along the sidewalk for his morning stroll. And he was, and I don't know who got him into the chair or how he was getting along, but there he was just using 1 foot to drag himself around the block for a morning stroll.